Well, good evening and welcome to Nashville. I'm Alan Jackson. I'll be the first to admit that I had little idea how deep the deep state really was. But it all seems to be coming together now, that strange and wasteful spending at USAID, the multiple examples of lawfare, all of it pointed at President Trump, and the government-run U.S. Global Media Office that was built to spread the good news about democracy, but turned into a taxpayer-financed mouthpiece. It became the voice of America for progressives. Well, the legacy media acts surprised that President Trump is trying to change that and a whole lot more. But the people who should be most surprised are you and I. Listen to how Tulsi Gabbard explains what she's seen of the deep state.
There are deep state actors across the federal government. These are dangerous people because they believe their views and opinions supersede the United States Constitution that they all swear an oath to uphold, to support and defend, and that their views and opinions supersede those, again, who are elected by the American people, specifically the President of the United States.
Well, it sounds as bad as many people feared. With us tonight, an investigative reporter who's had a clear window into the deep state. Eric Eggers is the Vice President of the Government Accountability Institute. Welcome back, Eric.
Alan, it's always great to see you and be with your audience. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's begin with this simple fact that the more we learn about the deep state, the less we can count on any sort of truth coming from inside government. What they told us about climate change was wrong. Same thing with the COVID vaccine. Examples are everywhere, and most recently we found out that even something as simple as the monthly jobs report could not be counted on to be accurate. Eric, tell us what you're seeing.
Alan, I think that's put quite perfectly, as always, because the things that we are told often turn out to be the opposite of what's true. Remember that we were told in 2024 that Donald Trump was the threat to democracy, and we were told that by someone who was the nominee for president who received exactly 0 votes in a Democratic primary process because they forced the most powerful man in the world, Joe Biden, to step down because the deep state thought that he was no longer a useful servant in perpetuating their empire. Donald Trump is the ultimate threat to the deep state. It's why they've done everything they can think of to try to keep him out of power. When he was president the first time, they impeached him twice. They then fundamentally changed the rules of the election in 2020. And then that's another thing they told us, that that was the safest and most secure election in American history. And then when anyone dared question it, they were shut down and deplatformed. Then after Donald Trump was out of office, they threw 4 different legal cases at him. Then when those didn't work, he was attempted to be assassinated 2 different times. The deep state is very concerned, and all you have to do is look at the lengths they're willing to go to try to stop Donald Trump from stopping them, to show you just how much is at stake.
Well, it seems that there are very few government offices that are immune from taking advantage of their inside access. Last night, President Trump fired an official at the Federal Reserve following allegations that she committed mortgage fraud by claiming 2 homes as her primary residence. Such a move would have given her access to better loan terms, which is particularly interesting in this case because at the Fed, she's part of the team that sets overall interest rates. Eric, the officer says she will not resign. How do you think this will end up?
Oh, is claiming 2 homes a primary residence not okay, Alan? Is primary only mean one thing? Yeah, of course, this is terrible, and this is part of a much larger effort Donald Trump is having to be able to, I think, fight on behalf of regular Americans and lower interest rates, which the Fed has been hesitant to do. If he's able to successfully remove this governor, he has to be able to do so for cause. So I believe her term was going to last another 10 years. So this would be a really big deal. Unfortunately, though, Alan, this is just business as usual in Washington, D.C. This is another reason why Donald Trump poses such a threat, because he is the opposite of business as usual. Washington, D.C. is one of the wealthiest areas in the country. 6 or 7 out of the 10 wealthiest counties in the country surround Washington, D.C., despite the fact that they produce nothing. It's not like Silicon Valley or the oil fields or anything like that. Money is so rampant there, and it's because they play by their own set of rules. Adam Schiff, senator from California, is another one who's run into allegations of mortgage fraud for exactly the same issue. And like this governor, he also appears guilty. So unfortunately, Washington, D.C. and the people who we pay with our tax dollars have a rules for thee and not for me mentality, and it leads to behaviors and decisions like this. It's quite sad.
Well, you recently reported on the insider trading bill that's before Congress. What stood out to me was your report that while the former Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, has always insisted that her husband did all the family stock trading, she and her husband saw their investments rise 745%, while the S&P average rose only a third as much in the same period. Do you think that she's supporting this new bill just to cover her tracks?
What I think, Alan, is that you and I are in the wrong line of work. We should have been in the Nancy Pelosi stock trading business, because business has been very good for the Pelosis. When the first effort to stop members of Congress from trading on insider knowledge, it's called the Stock Act, was passed in 2012, Nancy Pelosi had a net worth of $120 million. Since her portfolio is, as you noted, has outperformed the market to such a degree, she now has a net worth of $260 million. So maybe they've decided they've made enough money and they don't need to be able to trade on inside access anymore. But once again, unfortunately, Nancy Pelosi is hardly unique. She might be the best, and I like to joke that if she's going to support legislation that would ban members of Congress from buying or selling stock, it's kind of like Michael Jordan retiring. She is the GOAT of trading stocks as a member of Congress, but it's been a very busy year for congressional stock purchases. Last year, they set a record with, I believe, 9,000 trades of stock. This year, through July, they're already at 7,400. One member of Congress, Ro Khanna, his family has bought and sold stock over 2,000 times. So it's profoundly obscene the way these members of Congress are doing this. And the irony is, back to the original point, many of the people that are doing this, Alan, have campaigned and said they support the ban. So they say they want to get rid of the practice, but they are the most prolific practitioners of it themselves. It's ironic and hypocritical and wrong.
Unbelievable. Well, I've got a question about the extraordinary lawfare attacks on the president. A New York appeals court has tossed out the $500 million fine that Trump had hanging over him, following Attorney General Letitia James' politically biased case against him. She bragged about trying to take down Mr. Trump when he was running. Do you think this outcome will mean fewer cases like this, or will the Letitia James type of operators just try to double down on their attacks?
It's interesting, Alan, because Donald Trump appears to be right now riding a wave of momentum. And I think it's just because he's doing the right thing. It's like when he's putting troops in Washington, D.C., some people initially kind of wanted to push back, but then they're like, oh, wait, Washington, D.C. has a murder rate that's higher than Bogota and Islamabad, and it's 500% of like the average murder rate across the country. So maybe we shouldn't be against protecting lives. So I think that when you do things like stand up on the right side of issues, you do essentially become immune from these attacks. Letitia James is troubling, but I think it's about the larger issue. We talked about these 4 different charges they brought against Donald Trump when he was out of office in an attempt to keep him from regaining the seat. I remember, Alan, I couldn't believe this, that one of the other people who brought charges, Fani Willis, the prosecutor out of Atlanta, walked the red carpet, like in a gown, at the White House press correspondence dinner. And I thought, look at this. This is someone whose job it is to be a neutral prosecutor. It's supposed to be apolitical. And she's being celebrated at an event on behalf of this person's political opponent. And she's being celebrated essentially for prosecuting this person to try to keep him from regaining the seat. So that's just another example of the way the deep state reaches all aspects of the media and political establishment in Washington, D.C., and it's even more remarkable that Donald Trump's been able to rise above it.
Well, Eric, we need to take a short break. The deep state looks like an endless tunnel, and I've got more questions for you. We're back now with the co-host of the Drilldown podcast, the Vice President of the Government Accountability Institute, Eric Eggers. Congress is looking hard at the Biden White House, not just at the wide use of the auto signature machine, but the larger issue of who was actually running the place. Clearly, there's a need to get to the bottom of this, as was recently explained by columnist Miranda Devine.
Joe Biden was in no fit state, but continued the charade that he was. And we're talking about matters of life and death, of peace and war. And, just the Ukraine war, the incompetence with which that presidency carried out its duties tells you that this is an important issue that we need to know, because we must make sure it never happens again.
Well, Eric, I assume you agree with that.
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of things that the media miss when it came to the Joe Biden presidency. And obviously, the fact that he pretended to be cognitively able, and we were told, back to the theme of you're told the opposite of what's true, we were told that Joe Biden was never better, that he's doing Sudokus and cold fusion physics problems in his off time, when in fact I think they were calling a lid on his day early in the afternoon. He's going to bed by 4 o'clock, and the man clearly had suffered from a significant cognitive decline. So the media was not curious about that. They were also not curious about who was really running the country, because remember this, Alan, Barack Obama, when he left office, did not go back to Chicago. And while he had homes in Martha's Vineyard in Hawaii, he bought a mansion in a neighborhood in Georgetown, just across the street from where the White House was, metaphorically speaking. And he lived there during Joe Biden's presidency. And at no time did any reporter go and hang out outside of Barack Obama's house to kind of watch who was going back and forth and what level of influence or what level of interaction was he having with Joe Biden's staffers. So I just think it's another example of, we don't know who was running it. We don't know it was Joe Biden, or we know it wasn't Joe Biden. But I do believe it's fair to wonder just how much influence did Barack Obama and his staffers have during the Biden presidency. And it's another reason why I think we can be quite honestly grateful for the level of transparency the Trump administration has introduced.
Well, there's another deep state issue I want to ask you about. Former FBI Director James Comey has long denied that he'd ever been the source of classified leaks that were spread about Trump when he was running for office. But now that we've learned that he lied publicly and to Congress, should we assume that eventually Comey's going to be prosecuted?
Man, I hope so. I mean, it would be nice to see some accountability for some of the people who have just lied so blatantly. And we now have, because of these declassified emails and timelines, we know the extent to which the FBI was conspiring to prevent Donald Trump from reaching office. The Clinton campaign launched the whole Russiagate fiasco because they knew that they were actually the ones with a Russia problem. Because of reporting we did in the book Clinton Cash that exposed how much money Hillary and Bill made off of the transfer of 20% of U.S. uranium assets to Russia, they said, okay, we are clearly too vulnerable on this. So they fabricated the narrative that Donald Trump was actually the Russian asset, laundered it through a corrupt FBI, gave it to media outlets who are all too happy to report on it. They then win journalism awards, and ultimately it almost became the thing that kept Donald Trump out of the White House. Luckily, the American people saw past it. We now know how pervasive that lie became. But James Comey, I think, has a lot of questions to answer for, including that one.
Well, it seems like there's just no end to the insider abuse that's gone on in Washington. Your team at GAI have done a deep dive into the tax practices at the Clinton Foundation. You've exposed a lot of it, so much so that one FBI agent said that the entire foundation's a fraud. Can you share a little bit more about what you've learned and how bad it was?
Well, here's all you need to know about what the Clinton Foundation really stood for. And, they have these events, the Clinton Global Initiative. So when Hillary was running for president in 2016, coincidentally, that year is when they took in the most money in their foundation's history. And then after the 2016 election, when Hillary Clinton was no longer poised to be the president of the United States, donations to the foundation dropped 90%. That's always been, unfortunately, the Clinton business model. When Bill Clinton was giving speeches in his post-presidential career, 11 of the 13 speeches he gave, for which he was paid over $500,000, came when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. They leveraged her ability to give favors to people who gave to the Clinton Foundation or paid for Bill's speeches from this Department of State that she ran. So the Clinton Foundation was just another example of their pay-to-play scheme. One of the things that I've uncovered and reported on, and we did this in the book Clinton Cash, was at one of these Clinton Foundation initiatives, they were able to take a Haitian gold mining company, one of 2 gold mining permits that Haiti opened up in their post-earthquake disaster recovery efforts, and they put a Clinton brother on the board. Tony Rodham became on the board for this company. So, it's shameless how they exploited their access to power. So, unfortunately, I don't think they're going to stop anytime soon, and I can't wait to see what the next Clinton scandal is.
Well, before we run out of time, you've done a lot of work on the problems around election fraud. The president is now getting behind the effort to ban mail-in ballots. What's the problem there, and can it be fixed with a ban?
Well, the problem is that mail-in ballots have been universally recognized in a bipartisan way as the most susceptible to fraud. I actually did a video for PragerU about this a few years ago, and I wrote a book about the threats that face our elections. Mail-in balloting or ballots that are cast through the mail are a problem. Now, they can be used in secure ways if people have to show ID to request the ballots. But when states just mail everybody a ballot, that's no good. And one of the reasons why it's no good is because the voter rolls are rife with errors. The Supreme Court has cited statistics that show 1 out of 8 voter registrations are wrong. In New York, they've done investigations to try to cast ballots on behalf of flawed voter registrations, and 61 of the 63 times they were able to do so. So, I mean, these are a big-time problem. I think what Donald Trump will do is if he can take his Doge team, the level of granular analysis that they're able to do, if they can get states to give them access to do a real audit of the voter rolls, I think that's step one. You want to clean up the voter rolls, and then if you are mailing ballots to people, then you have more confidence they're going to the right place. But it just shows you that Donald Trump's able to lead a conversation that we have to have if we want to restore confidence in American elections.
Well, Eric Eggers, it is always a learning experience to have you on. Thanks for taking the time today.
Alan, you're the best. My best to you and your audience, as always.